All right, welcome everyone. This is Our Travel Experiences. I'm your host, Kyle Rasmussen. And today I have with me Annie, Into the Bold adventurer. How are you today, Annie?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you here. I'm really excited to learn more about indie travel and your experiences with that. I think it's super interesting, so I think the listeners will enjoy it as well.
I hope so.
Well, I think the best place to start is what is indie travel and how did you kind of get into this?
Okay. Indie travel, as I just described this, many people will go, "Oh, that's me." Yes, we've just never really had common language around this. So how I define indie travel, I mean, indie is short for independent. So this is really about travel that you are actively engaged in and that you plan yourself. So this is not big bus tours, cruise ships, all-inclusive resorts. This is you going out independently and exploring new places. Um, you know, Whatever that looks like for you, it's really about creating the experiences that you most want to have
Mhm.
instead of following someone else's itinerary or that sort of thing. It's really about creating the experience, that you've always dreamed of. Like not everybody on a, standard group tour is interested in all of those things. And so it's really about spending the time that you want, engaging the way that you want, seeking out the things that you're most interested in. Like if you go to Paris and you don't care about going to the Louvre, then skip it. So, things like that. So that's what indie travel is really all about. It's about seeing the world in the ways that are most exciting for you.
Mhm. I love that. As someone who likes to travel usually independently, because I like my own itinerary, I love that. I think it's really empowering too to be able to do that as well.
I agree. And I think that in my experience, a lot of people are, again, already indie travelers, but we just have never had a, common word that kind of combines us all together. The travel industry doesn't focus on indie travelers because we're not where those big companies make their money. And so
Mhm.
I just wanted to create kind of a central language and place for those of us who travel this way or want to travel this way to connect and share those experiences and help each other out.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, how long ago did you start Into the Bold?
I mean, this particular version, it has been constant iterations.
Yeah.
I came back. I mean, obviously, COVID destroyed all travel things. So
Hmm.
I did some other things during that time. And then in the summer of 2021, I kind of came back to it with this form, which, is still evolving because I am a person who is also evolving. So it will continue to grow and change. But that is the kind of central core is people getting to explore in the ways that they want.
Hmm. Yeah, love it. So what kind of give the listeners a background, like what led you to this point?
Oh Lord. Okay, I'm going to try and keep this as condensed as possible. So, I mean, I was always from the time I was little interested in travel and seeing what else was out there. Like one of my grandpas every year for Christmas used to give us a an annual subscription to National Geographic, and man, I loved looking at those pictures, like the pull out maps, and I would save them. And so, like, I've always, I think, had that innate desire to be an explorer and see what's out there. Um, and I had a couple of experiences when I was younger. Like I went on a cruise with a company that I worked for, and it was fun and I had a great time. But there was also that element of like, I also want more, and that if I were doing it, this isn't how I would do it. Um,
Hmm.
and then I had a similar experience at an all inclusive resort where, like, this is good. It's not like this is a bad thing, but this isn't how I would do it. And so, fast forward to 2008, I got a job that, and part of the reason that I took it was the promise of, travel. So my first true, I mean, somebody else was paying for it, but I had to plan the whole thing and execute. So my first international travel experience, or overseas, I should say, um, just, I mean, I had less than 24 hours to prepare. My boss came into my office and was like, hey, there's this project, that we had been working on for our European market, and said, I need you to go visit these 4, 5 facilities in Europe, and I need you to leave tomorrow. And I was like, I mean, what? I'm sorry, what are you saying to me? And so, like, I mean, I planned a 2.5 week trip through Europe in approximately 2 hours,
Oh my
ran
God.
home, threw things in a suitcase, and was like driving to the airport the next morning with absolutely no idea what I was doing. I mean, I had like dashed off emails to my colleagues and made some hotel reservations, and like, okay, I guess, I mean, I don't know what, we're just going to go do the thing. Um, and
That's crazy.
I know it was wild. It still is one of those things where I'm like you can't make that up. Like, where does that even come from? Um, and like, moment one, I was sold. Like, I had this, a couple moments that first day of just like absolute clarity of, oh my God, I want to do this forever. I want to see as much of the world as I can, as often as I can, whatever. Um,
Mhm.
and I'd also discovered, at the end of that 2.5 weeks, that like, oh, that wasn't actually nearly as difficult as, I had imagined it would be in thinking about planning my own trips or whatever. Um,
Mhm.
and so that's really kind of where it all started. And from there, like, I met my husband like 6 months later. And we have, he also was a travel lover. So we did a lot of exploring together, and then taken solo trips, all, and planned trips for other people, on and on. And so that's kind of how it all began.
Wow. What an insane start to traveling internationally.
I know. It was I know. I still think back to that 48 hours of like, what is happening? Like,
Yeah.
talk about a total like game changer, life-changing moment that just happens so fast.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was wild.
Yeah. I mean, especially like, okay, you're going to be gone for 2.5 weeks now, and you got to plan all of this like super quickly. I mean, I can't imagine the anxiety and adrenaline that was running through you.
Oh my God, totally. I was just like, okay, go to the website, like flights. I mean, I think over that 2.5 weeks, I think I went through 13 different airports because everything was like last minute planned, right? So like,
Mhm.
other flights are booked, there's only so many routes, and also I didn't really know what I was doing. And I was in like budget constraints, like, this is how much money I have, you know, to spend on these things based on corporate policies or whatever. So
Mhm.
it was just a like, okay, I'm just winging it.
But you made it through, and obviously that it sounds like it was life changing for you. Um, so I'm gonna assume it worked out all right.
It did. It was, I mean, it was amazing. Like, every moment that I was not like stuck in an office or, you know, um, whatever, I was out exploring. And thankfully, my colleagues were wonderful and gave me recommendations for, like, my first stop was Stockholm. I had no idea. I didn't have time to research. I didn't know what there was to see. So thankfully, I had people along the way to like, oh, if you're going to be here, check out these things. So I did get some free time and had like one full weekend to myself where I just got to like go where I wanted, do what I wanted. And that was just absolutely magical.
Yeah, that's awesome. So coming back from that trip, I mean, what thoughts were running through your mind?
How do I do more of this? Like, okay, I mean, it was nice, obviously, to have someone else paying for it. Um, Also, like, I encountered other, like, indie travelers on that experience that obviously were not there for work, that were doing this on their own, and saw the ways that they were traveling and the places that they were staying. And I was like, that's way more my jam. And so it gave me a lot of perspective on, okay, when I am going to pay for this, here are some ideas about how I want to do this. Places, like the idea of hostels or, pensions, bed and breakfast, that sort of thing. Like, I was staying in typical like corporate hotels because that's, how it was set up. But it was also clear that like that's not how I would do it if I'm paying for it. So it was great. It laid the foundation. I got to like see a lot of different ways of traveling, on that one single trip so that I could, going forward, kind of make it how I wanted it to be.
Yeah, yeah. So what were some of the trips after that that you planned yourself?
Oh my gosh. So the first one, so I met my husband, and that summer he's a teacher, and so he had already like planned a summer trip, and was kind enough to invite me along, which, my corporate job was not about to let me like disappear for 6 weeks. So I was like, I think I can maybe squeeze out 10 days. um, and Italy, especially Rome, had always been at the top of my list. And so together we planned a trip. We spent a few days in Madrid. I mean, this was a whirlwind when, when I was living the PTO life, it was like, pack it in as much as I can because I only have so much time. So we covered, like, spent a few days in Madrid, flew to Rome, and then trained our way from there through Florence and then all the way up to Paris. And came home from there. And that was, I mean, we made stops along the way, like all in 10 days.
Wow. That's a lot in 10 days.
I know it was a lot. Like, I don't like to travel at that pace anymore, but I was in my mid-20s. It was a different ball game. Yeah. And since then, like, I've gone on many solo trips, like 6 weeks through the Balkans. And like, I've taken, just before COVID, my mom and I went to, Norway. She wanted to see the fjords, and so we made that happen. And like, my husband and I have gone with friends, gone camping in Iceland and around Scotland. And, I mean, Europe has been my realm of exploration for the last 14 or so years.
What have been some of your favorite spots in Europe?
Oh man, there's so much. Yeah, I know. I feel like all of the continents are full of these wonderful things, but as a, Europhile, and that is my heritage, and so that's the place that I tend to be drawn to. Scotland is definitely a favorite. I mean, just there is something about that place that when I am there, I'm just like, oh, and I'm home. Only later did I find out that actually nearly half of my DNA is Scottish. So that makes,
there you go.
I know, it's one of those weird things that, like, I wonder if this is just like embedded in our DNA and like passed down over time when you visit a place that you didn't even know that that's your heritage. So that's been a favorite. I have absolutely fallen in love with the Balkans over the last, I don't know, 7 years or so. Sarajevo in Bosnia Herzegovina is also a absolute favorite. I keep going back there. And I keep going back to the Balkans. Like, I know there's still other stuff in Europe I want to see, but man, there's something about that particular region that I just love.
Yeah, it seems like a beautiful area. I haven't got to go down there myself, but hopefully soon.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I want to go back. There's still a few countries there I have not yet had a chance to visit, and I want to go back to most of them. So I still have plenty of time to spend there.
Yeah. So as you've kind of been on this journey the last 14 years, This might be a hard question, but what have you learned and changed as you've evolved and as things have changed over the years?
Oh man. Yeah. How much time do we have?
Yeah.
I mean, for myself personally, I think the biggest takeaway from travel for me is that, like, no matter where you go, no matter how different a place may seem than what you're used to, is that people are just people. We are all
Mhm.
just in search of the same things. A little bit of, we want to take care of the people that we love. We want to do the things that make us happy. And, we all have the same basic needs. And that, yeah, it doesn't matter. Like, all of those things translate across cultures and languages. And, that's been the biggest thing to me, is that we're all just people. And that there is absolutely no one right way to do anything or to be in the world.
Yes.
Is that, like, what you think is the, air quotes, right way to do something, or to travel, or to be interested in, or to live your life, is just one of an infinite number of ways, and that no one has the lock on what is right, what is wrong, how things really should be done, um, which is really rather liberating.
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. I would
Yeah,
say that's one of my biggest takeaways as well, having traveled the world. You realize, people just want to be happy. They want to enjoy their lives, and like you said, there's no one right way to do things. And I think, the coolest thing is that you can say, you can travel to a place that's totally different from what you're used to, and experience this different way of life, and you can take something from that might resonate with you and bring it back into your normal life. I
absolutely.
think that's so fun. It makes you more well-rounded, and you just, you're crafting, you're crafting your life in that indie way too.
Absolutely. I think that, there's inspiration for in all of these places. There's something, like, it's the paradox of it feeling very unfamiliar, and yet being able to see that common human element throughout. It's like
Mhm.
both of those things at once. And I love that.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. Um, so what are, I guess, kind of tell me a little bit about your process, your what what sort of things that you provide to people that are looking for this indie travel.
Yeah, I mean, this has evolved over time too. Like, this whole thing, as far as like a business or something that I do, you know, to help people, has evolved. I mean, it started with a friend of mine reaching out. Her and her husband wanted to go to Ireland, and she had sent me a message, because I have shared, obviously, my travels over the years on social media and whatever. And she reached out and was like, my husband and I really want to go to Ireland. I have absolutely no idea how to do this. Will you help me? I'll pay you. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? Like, is that a thing? Is that a thing that people will, like, pay money for? What? For me, it's a thing that I just have learned about because I love it. Like,
Hmm.
the idea that someone would see that as a useful skill was like a total revelation to me. Um, and so, my process, I mean, it started there, and I helped them plan their trip, and they had a great time. And I was like, wow, I really love doing this. How can I do more of this and help more people get out there? And so, I because I am also very oriented toward having a lot of options. Like, I don't want somebody to just say, well, here, do this thing this way, right? Like, that kind of defeats
Hmm.
the purpose. So what I have come up with, and what I offer for indie travelers, is like just a 1 hour consultation. If somebody already has, an idea of what they want to do, or want some insight on a place that I have been to, that, like, cool, let's just have 1 hour. You don't need me to lay this out for you. You just want to, like, pick somebody's brain, get some insight. So there's that. And then I have discovered that I really love teaching people. I used to be a teacher. I love teaching people how to do this. Like in a lot of cases, I would rather teach you how to do it than do it for you. Um, so I have created a course that is all about how to plan your own international trip. Um, and it follows the process that I use with my clients who want more help, where it's, you know, this isn't just, okay, tell me where you want to go. For me, this is so much deeper. We start with it's, you know, let's, what is it that you imagine? And a lot of times people don't know where they want to go, especially if it's their first trip, because I mean, this is a
Mhm.
world full of options. How do you narrow that down to like 2 weeks, right? Uh,
Yeah.
and so it's really a process for me of asking the right questions and discovering what it is that's really motivating them to take this trip, what kind of experiences they imagine having, how do they want to spend their days, what kinds of things are really interesting to them. Um, and so once I kind of tease out that information, then helping them really create a trip around those things.
Hmm.
So, yeah, and it's really fun to just help them imagine it, and it makes it more real for them. They see it as more possible. And
Yeah.
then next thing you know, they're getting on that plane and going to have this experience they've always wanted to have.
I love that. What's been some of the successes you've had, or comments that your clients have had coming back from those trips?
My favorite one, and this is what I usually, most of my clients come back and say this, and it's like, for me, it's like the ultimate where they go, "Oh, I can totally, like, this is doable." It becomes like by going on this trip that I've helped them put together, or given them some insight for, that they come back feeling totally empowered and capable of doing it on their own, which,
Hmm.
plenty of, if you talk to the business, we're going to air quotes gurus out there, they'll tell you that that's a terrible idea, that, setting my clients up to not need me anymore. But that's really for me, that's the goal, is like, I want you to go out and see like how possible this really is. That I want to create this experience in such a way that they are involved and that they see how it all comes together, and that when they go do it, they feel totally capable of doing it for themselves the next time. And so for
Hmm.
me, I hope that that's always a catalyst into more travel in their life, making this a a regular part of their lifestyle, not just a once in a lifetime trip. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. So, have you had clients that have come back for a different trip, even though that maybe they could do it themselves the second time?
Yes. A lot of times though, they come back for like the 1 hour consultation, like, oh, hey, I know you've been to this place. I want to plan a trip there. And so we'll spend an hour talking about, you know, the places that I know as far as like where to stay, or just my experience, or giving them just information about, you know, some of the quirks that you may not know if you haven't been there before. Um,
Hmm.
but most of my clients don't come back for the same level of assistance in creating their trip. They usually come back either like purchase the course so that they can learn all the ins and outs of basically how I created their trip,
Yeah.
or to just pick my brain about like, oh, okay, like they got it. And so now they just want a little bit of insight, or, you know, just an hour's worth of assistance, which is great because those are the things that I love most.
I love that. Have there been any challenges along the way, or any potential failures, things that haven't worked out well?
I mean, in my own personal experience, plenty.
Yeah.
Oh, so many. Thankfully, not for clients. I didn't start doing helping other people do this until I had been traveling myself for nearly 10 years. So thankfully, there have been no like crazy mishaps with clients, but I have had plenty of my own. It's like, my husband and I took my stepson and nephew on a trip. Um, they were 14 and 17, so you can imagine how that was. Um, And we arrived in Geneva, Switzerland, to find that our hostel had like closed down, like no longer existed. So, oh, okay, we're gonna figure that out. Yeah, like we didn't factor in our very first trip together. We didn't factor in connection time and ended up missing a train in Milan and had to, figure all of that out. We've had lost luggage. I mean, we've had plenty of mishaps. Thankfully, though, not too many compared to some of the horror stories I hear. I feel like the travel gods usually hook me up, and things go pretty smoothly.
Yeah, that's funny. I know there's always something that doesn't go exactly right on a trip. I feel like I always have at least one thing that is not okay or something. But I feel like probably for you not having a lot of bad experiences, and I don't think I've had a ton either. It probably is that experience and that planning and that knowledge of like, if I am designing my trip in this way that fits what I want, here's all the things I need to think about to make sure it goes smoothly. So you have
Totally.
that.
Like just building in, extra time or planning for the like I can see, this is the upside of my ADHD brain is that it thinks of all of the things. So, like, oh, I see a potential snag here and that I can plan for it or and the other thing that you learn through travel is flexibility. Like, oh, something goes wrong, like flipping out about it isn't going to help anything. And so you learn to just like, okay, cool. So now what are we going to do instead?
Mm-hmm.
And it also helps you maintain perspective about like, what's really important? Do I still have my passport, my credit cards? Cool. Like I can figure this out. Yeah, I feel like it doesn't, especially over time, that when there is a mishap, a lot of times, in the grand scheme of things, it's pretty minor and you learn to just roll with it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would, sometimes when things don't go as planned, there's probably some serendipitous moments as well that come out of that.
Oh, totally. I mean, I feel like more often than not that like something doesn't go according to plan and so you adjust and it ends up being like so much better than the original plan anyway. So it's like, okay, that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, I know one sort of an example that I have for that is I was planning to go to Lisbon, Portugal after I went to Morocco recently and ended up meeting a bunch of people on the trip. And so we ended up doing a bunch of stuff together and had dinner together in Lisbon. And it ended up being an awesome time. Same thing just recently in Alaska. Met just this random person and they didn't have a car and I had a car and we were like, well, let's go do the stuff that we need a car for together and make a fun trip out of it. So I don't know. I love that kind of like you never know what to expect and you never know like who you're going to meet or what experiences you're going to have.
Absolutely. Like that's one of the best things. I have made lifelong friends, and some of them due to mishaps, like stuff not going the way that it should have. And yeah, your paths cross. And I mean, that's one of the best things about travel is yes, the people you meet along the way. I mean, like that's one of the things I always tell clients when I'm working with them is build in time for nothing, for just wandering, exploring, whatever. Is like I have found that so many of my best memories, my best stories come from the stuff I didn't plan. Like, yes, going to those iconic sites, they're iconic for a reason. And yes, you want to go and experience that. And so much of the magic of what you are going to bring home with you and your best memories aren't going to be from seeing the Colosseum. They're going to be from this random little place that you found 5 streets away where, you met the owner of the trattoria and heard his story of, you know what I mean? Like the stuff that you can't plan for so many times ends up being the best.
Yeah. I love to, once you are in your destination, just asking the locals, what kind of things they like to do and where they like to eat and that sort of thing. That's where you find the real stuff.
Absolutely. When I did my solo trip through the Balkans, I purposely made no plans and let my conversations with the people I encountered along the way determine where I was going to go next and where I would have dinner and where, and it was exponentially better than anything I could have researched and pre-planned.
Yeah, that'd be fun to try that. Just how long were you there for?
6 weeks. So
Oh, wow.
I know I only had reservations. I booked a hostel for my first few nights so that I knew, so that I didn't want to like land and be like, okay, where am I going to stay? So I knew where I was staying when I got there. And then I booked the same hostel for a couple of nights before I left so that I knew like, okay, I have a beginning and an end point. And in an insane amount of like magical travel research and serendipity, I managed to score a rental car for 6 weeks for like $500.
Oh, wow.
I know. I don't even know. With all of the paperwork to cross like all of the borders and like I don't even know. I don't know if I could even replicate that. But yeah, my conversations with, like my servers at dinner or the people I encountered, like I met random people in the park who said, hey, go check out this place. But that determined my itinerary. And so, yeah, I just kept following what people told me for 6 weeks. And even, like it was amazing.
Yeah, that sounds so fun. Did you feel like scared or nervous at all that maybe they were telling you to go to some bad place or, might not have your best interest in mind?
No, thankfully, my spidey senses with those things are pretty on point. Most of it wasn't, I mean, of course, some things like in the specific destination, but a lot of it was, like locals. Like I started in Prague and asking people, like, if I'm going to go somewhere else in your country, where else should I see? And just like taking a survey and then, the place with the most votes won. And that's where I went.
Oh man, that sounds so fun. I want to try that now.
Yeah. I mean, I want to do it again. I have not had, I've had a couple smaller experiences like that have been wonderful, but yeah, I would love to do another round of that where just like, I don't have any plans. We're just going to go do whatever.
That's got to be so freeing to live like that for a little while.
Yeah, totally. And, I had taken all my camping gear with me. So like, I didn't even have, and campgrounds are like everywhere in Europe. Finding a camp spot, especially if you have a tent, is like easy breezy. So I figured, and I was on a super budget. So it's like, I got my tent. I mean, I can sleep in the car if I need to, which I never did. But, I also had it set up so that like I wouldn't be, in a desperate situation, like, oh my God, I don't have somewhere to sleep tonight. So I set it up so that I would be, at least well taken care of as far as that goes.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess on that front, what tips or advice would you have for people to make their solo trip, more affordable?
Don't go during high season. Like that is always the biggest thing for me is like, man, if you go to a place when everyone else is going, it's going to be more expensive, like basic supply and demand. So, and then, for me, I feel like going to lesser known places, this is part of why I love the Balkans is it's insanely affordable. But because it's not the places that are super popular, you also get to feel more of that, just the essence of a place. It's not you're not getting the version that's set up for tourists because there aren't so many tourists. This is just a place where people are living their lives. And yes, there are things to see here. But those places also tend to be more affordable. Um, I mean, if you are an adventurer and love the outdoors, camping is a great way to save a bunch of money. I also am well aware that that is not everyone's cup of tea. um, yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is just being clear on, I think having a plan helps you save. I mean, having, I don't mean like pre-planned everything, but having some ideas about like, okay, in these situations, I can do this. Like for me, taking a tent and camping made it so that I didn't end up having to pay for a super expensive place. Like if I showed up in a city where like rooms were booked, like cool, I can drive 20 minutes and find a campground somewhere. So little things like that where you can kind of give yourself options.
Yeah.
I think can save money. And a big thing for me is focus on the things that are most important to you. Spend your money on those things. Like get clear on, the kind of experience, what kind of things are you hoping to see and do, and focus your money on those, and then everything else gets to be flexible. So you can save money over here, over there, and like, but you're gonna splurge on this experience that's really important to you, but then everything else can be flexible instead of just feeling like you have to do everything.
Yeah. I feel like if you try to do everything and like, try to be in every sort of situation, you're probably going to spend a lot of money that way.
And you run yourself ragged. Like at some point, you kind of hit the wall and run out of energy to keep going at that pace, and everything kind of just starts to run together. Like slow down a little bit, and which has taken me years to learn how to do.
It's tough.
It is, because we're excited. We want to go. We do want to see all the things, and then the limitations of being a human, are that there's only so much time, there's only so much money. So you got to pick and choose. You got to make choices, and while that sucks, there is some freedom in knowing that I can't do everything. So I'm going to pick the things that are really important to me and focus on those.
Yeah. So when you are designing your trips for yourself, what are those things that are important to you, or what types of things do you like to do?
Food. I mean, I joke, but it's not really a joke. That sightseeing is what I do between meals. Like, I am always on the hunt for, and while I love a good like Michelin star restaurant, especially when I'm traveling, I am all about the street food. I want to get down with the local cuisine. It's one of my favorite ways to experience a new place. I feel like you can learn so much about a culture and people through the food, through the ingredients they use and the cooking methods, and seeing what place food has in social life and all of those things. So that is usually at the top of my list. I love, especially as I've gotten older and seen a lot more of the big man-made kind of, I'm going to air quotes, wonders or, achievements. I find myself much more drawn to the natural world. I want to see, the beautiful landscapes, and like I think about Iceland and how it's like landing on another planet, and on this one island there's so many different geological formations and like all that stuff. So I love the natural beauty. And then I love finding the like funky offbeat places. Like I think about this one on a regular basis when I'm talking about this stuff, like the Sea Monster Museum in the middle of nowhere, Iceland. Those kinds of things that are just like funky offbeat, like, the alley that is full of graffiti, or, like I was just in Toronto and there was a whole exhibition about psychedelics that was like, let's go check. I'm totally curious. So I love the like funky offbeat things too, that are just unique to wherever you find yourself. So those are probably like my big three.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that sounds like a fun time.
I know. What are yours? I'm totally curious.
Mine, I'm really into history. So any sort of history museum, I'm into that for sure. But honestly, I love just walking around the cities. I try to do as much walking as possible
Hmm.
when I'm traveling, because that's where I feel like you see a lot of the kind of little stuff that you wouldn't necessarily hear about. Um, but yeah, I like to I like the nature as well. I love seeing the natural landscapes. Of course, like the human achievements as well. Um, but I would say I'm not a huge foodie. I do like trying all the different foods, but it's not usually my main focus. Um, but I just like to see the sights and just see how people live. I think it's fascinating.
I totally agree. And my husband is a history lover also. So when we travel together, it's, we take turns like, okay, we'll do a history thing and now food. And now we'll do a
Yeah.
history thing and now food. And so, it's a nice mix. I love the history also, but I usually get plenty of, because I'm also a walker. Like if I mean, there was one day on a trip with my sister-in-law that we walked literally 20 miles around London. Um,
Wow.
I know it was wild, but you're so right that walking, like walking from one side to another instead of like hopping on the subway or taking, the hop on. I mean, the hop on, hop off bus or whatever is like there's so much magic in those in between places.
Hmm.
You're going from one thing to the next. You never know what you're going to encounter along the way.
Yeah, yeah. Speaking of those hop off buses, I don't know. I mean, never say never, but those things annoy me, and I don't ever want to plan to be on one of those.
I have never taken one. However, I have from other indie travelers heard that, if you are going, if you're interested in seeing the main sites, if they're spread out, like if they're not
Mhm.
particularly walkable, that's a better option than like taking the subway because you still get to see the city in between.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I know. I personally have not done that, but yeah, I'm with you. Never say never. I mean, there may come a point where I'm like, yep, I just want to hop on that bus and take me to the next spot I want to go.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's fun to hear like how your thoughts and how you've traveled has changed a little bit as you've gotten older and as you've had more experience. I'm kind of curious to see what that's like for me as I start getting older and uh, you know start slowing down a little bit.
I know. I mean, I know it's weird because I mean, in my head, I'm still, basically 14. Um,
I feel
but
like
yeah,
I'm
I
14
mean,
when I'm traveling. I'm like, oh my gosh, everything is amazing.
same. Yeah, I think I've just learned that, like, oh man, I think the biggest lesson for me is that you can't see it all. No matter how
Hmm.
much I go, like, no matter how much I try, I'm still not going to see it all and just giving myself permission to slow down a little bit. And I think part of it too has come with making travel really part of my lifestyle. It's not like I don't have that thing in my head as much as I used to of like, oh my God, but I might never come back here.
Hmm.
Now it's like I can come back here if I want to, if that's important to me. But I think it's just kind of really establishing that as a foundational piece of my life has also helped me give myself permission to slow down and like, yeah, if I really want to come back here, I can find a way to make that happen.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, like, that's okay because I'm going to need at least 4 or 5 lifetimes to see everything I want to. So, like, we just have to be chill.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like that's been part of my evolution the last few years as well as like I like to do and see the things that I get to the point where I'm like, you know what, I'm satisfied what with being here. Like I feel like I really visited and feel comfortable. Like if I didn't come back, that's okay. But if I do want to come back, like I totally could, kind of thing. But not
Yeah,
putting some pressure on like I have to see this, 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 and this. Otherwise, this trip sucks.
right. Or that if I, and that's a thing I do for myself and for my clients of like, what are your absolute must do things in a place?
Mhm.
Like I will make a list of like, I'm not leaving this place without seeing this, this, this. And
Yeah.
also well aware that there will be more things that I learn about once I get there that I'm going to want to see too. And so I think for me, it's a lot of the evolution has been seeing fewer places and spending more time in those places that like
Mhm.
if I had like there are some things that I really want to see here. And so I'm going to make sure that I give myself enough time to do those things instead of trying to run through 5 countries in 10 days or something.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that's been part of the evolution too. It's like, I want to purposely set out to leave these places feeling like that, right? That like if I
Mhm.
don't get to come back here, I'm gonna be okay. Yeah, of course I could come back here. If somebody like gives me a free trip to this place, you bet I'll come back. But that, like I can leave satisfied, or I can leave knowing there's so much more I want to see here. So I'm gonna make sure that I plan to come back here.
Yeah. 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 I think that's a good mindset to have. So kind of shifting gears a little bit, but obviously indie travel, independent travel, that isn't necessarily just you by yourself on the trip, but what are your thoughts on solo travel?
I love it. I love it. I mean, like I do solo trips and then my husband and I also travel together. I travel with friends or family or whatever. But I think that there's something extra special about solo travel because you don't have to be anything to anyone. You don't have to
Mhm.
take into consideration what somebody else wants to do, someone else's schedule, um, any of that. You just get to do whatever you feel like doing in any given moment, whether that's sitting in a cafe for an hour reading a book, or you know what I mean,
Mhm.
wandering from one end of the city and back again, whatever that looks like. I love that. I also love, I won't lie, there are plenty of moments where, like you do something silly or goofy or you go the wrong way or whatever. And man, there's nobody there to see it.
Yeah.
That like, oh man, I just screwed that up. Guess what? It doesn't matter. There is no one here. It doesn't matter. Um, and I just think there is an empowerment. I feel like that word is sometimes overused, but I feel like solo travel is such a confidence builder that like you
Mhm.
really, when there's no one to bounce ideas off of or that you're relying on to help you navigate a situation or a place or find something or whatever it is, but when it's just you and all of the entire experience rests on your knowledge, your abilities, that especially when you reach the end and you're like, oh my God, I just did all of that. Like by
Mhm.
myself, I did that. I think it is such a confidence boost, like to just really test yourself and see what you're made of. I mean, yeah, I really feel like every human, especially women, should take at least one solo trip to a place where they do not speak the language for a week
Mhm.
at least once in their life. It'll
Yeah.
It's a game changer.
Yeah. 100% agree. One of my passions that I hope that I can try to implement in the future is that, especially in America, every like graduating high school senior should like have to go to abroad for at least a week.
Totally.
Just see something different.
And maybe we team up on that at some point because like I have this dream of creating a travel scholarship
Mhm.
for women, but as a teacher, I mean students too, but for people who, like, because let's go ahead and acknowledge that the ability to be able to do this uh, requires some amount of privilege, right? Like,
Mhm.
that we can have this conversation about being able to, go and buy plane tickets and go do this. There are plenty of people who that's not really a viable option. And so
Yeah.
I would love to create, some sort of travel scholarship for people who really have a deep desire to do this and don't have the means or opportunity or knowledge or whatever it is that's in their way. Um, and yeah, get to make that dream come true for them. I would love that.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I think we should talk about that later.
Totally. But yes, I hear you. I want more people go have these experiences, please.
Yeah. I think gives you a better perspective on the world and just keeps your mind open to other ideas and ways of doing things.
And other people, I mean, it's really hard for a lot of those stereotypes to that we are, just that we are handed down from generation to generation, whatever. But it's hard for those things to survive in the place of when you're actually there experiencing the place. So many of those things are just, it's like Mythbusters, like, oh, you know, and some of them you don't even realize you have until you find yourself in those situations where you're
Mhm.
making assumptions and it's like, and then, your experience of actually being there proves all of them wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, that is 100% for sure. Yeah, it's crazy how many I guess things that I was taught or like told in school or seen on the news are just not true.
Totally.
Not the way life is there. It's one
Agree.
small piece maybe, but it's not, the vast majority.
Right, you're not getting the whole story, and you don't and it's
Mhm.
hard to get the whole story until you go and experience the place for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Um, I love that. That's really inspiring to me. Trying to make that happen. Um, what are some other maybe examples that you have of trips you've designed or anything else that you want to share in terms of Into the Bold?
I mean, I love the creating of trips. I also, I am reaching a place where I love helping people, like whatever way that looks like. I feel like I have reached a place, like, especially with the course. I love, like, that has been a thing I've wanted to create for a long time. So it's wild to me that it's actually done. um, but for me,
How
I
much
feel like,
time and energy did you put into that?
I mean, as far as the actual creation, I don't know, however many hours, but gathering all of the information, I feel like I joke, not really, that like if there were a PhD available in indie travel, I would have one. For the amount of time and money I have spent gathering all of the
Yeah.
knowledge that I put into that is a whole separate conversation. But I feel like it is up to this point in my travel life, like the culmination of all of my best insights, knowledge, tools, strategies for creating an epic experience with all of the
Mhm.
flexibility for doing it the way that you want to do it. Like that's the start of the whole thing is like, okay, let's talk about the experience you want to have. This isn't a one size fits all. It's a choose your own adventure instead. Um, and so I love that that is now available. And at the same time, I also feel like I have spent all of these years collecting so many insane, fun, like impactful stories through my travels. Like we've just touched on a couple of them here that I also want to start sharing those
Mhm.
because I feel like for me, I love hearing stories from other people and their experiences. And I can't help but hope that like sharing more of these experiences will help other people see that this is also possible.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, like I mean, Into the Bold is still evolving. That I want to do more writing and help more people get out there and see what's possible. Um, so yeah, that's kind of where we are in this particular moment.
Yeah. So I guess, do you want to share? I know we've touched on a few stories, but do you want to share like one of the most fun stories you have, or one of the most impactful stories that you've had while traveling?
I mean, I think one of my there's a few, but I think one of my favorites, I mean, that we've touched is just that first trip, that first moment of finally, like, I mean, dreaming of Europe from the time I was small, and like coming out of the clouds over Stockholm. I mean, and we weren't over Stockholm yet, you know, it's out in the countryside, and you know, the skies are gray. It was the beginning of September, and all you can see are trees, which, I mean, as a tree lover, was absolutely glorious. But having just that moment of that feeling, like, so deeply, that like, oh my God, I'm home. Not necessarily this country, but like this continent is, you know, I mean, like, I knew I had some European heritage, you know, now having done my DNA, I'm like, oh wow, okay, so yes, I have this makes more sense. But just having it be so clear that the connection that I felt to this land, and like, seriously, standing in the passport control, I hadn't even left the airport yet. And I'm standing there waiting for my very first passport stamp. So exciting. And yeah, again, that clarity of like, this is what I'm here for. Like, I decided in that moment that I was never going to have kids. I was going to pursue this in some way for as long as I could. Like, I don't think I've ever had that amount of clarity about anything ever before or since. Like, this is like a 2x4 to the face, right? Like, oh my God, this is it. And that by the end of that first day, it was also so clear to me that like, I am meant to share this. I'm not just having these experiences for myself. While yes, I mean, of course, I'm soaking in every moment, but like, this isn't just for me. I have got to share this in some way. And I mean, I'm still figuring out what that looks like. You know, that's a huge part of why I created Into the Bold, was to have a place to share what I've learned, what I've experienced, you know, the skills to help other people do it for themselves, whatever. But that is, I know it seems maybe strange, but that is also part of my motivation for traveling, is like, it's never just for me. It is and it isn't, right? Like, I take away all of my own personal experiences, lessons, all of that, but that it's also meant to turn around and be shared.
Yeah. I definitely feel the same way. I feel like, you know, having been able to travel to all these places, I have a responsibility to share it, to show people, you know, what life is actually like elsewhere, and help them, like, inspire them to go see it themselves, and have an open mind about all of this.
Absolutely. And I feel like sometimes I go about these things backwards. Like, you know, I started with, here's all the skills you need, right? Like, I've built this thing, I've shared a bunch of information, I've dumped my brain into this course of like, okay, here's the like nuts and bolts of how you do it. And now I'm moving a little more towards the like stories about why you should, and what is out there waiting for you, and what's possible, and all of that. So, you know, sometimes I feel like I do these things backwards, but hey, that's all right.
Yeah, well, we all work in our own ways, and we all, probably want different trips too, depending on what we like to do and see. So, perfect reason to talk to someone like you, and have a trip designed specifically to what people want.
Yeah, I'm here for it.
I love it. Well, anything else that you want to share, or that we missed?
I mean, I feel like we have covered a lot. I mean, I'm sure we could spend another 2 hours covering more things, but
Yeah.
always
Beach travel stories.
right. I know that's don't even kid yourself. Yes, that's going to be a thing. Yeah, if anybody listening has questions, I mean, I love to hear from other indie travelers. I love to connect, hear the stories, share all the good stuff. So yeah, always feel free to reach out. I mean, you know, intothebold.com is the website. I have not in the last couple of months spent a lot of time on social media. That comes and goes for me, but you can find me. Instagram is where I share things, if I share things. Yeah. And I'm going to be revamping my emails to share more of these stories and more resources and things like that. So yeah, anybody, reach out anytime, shoot me an email. But come say hi. I love meeting my fellow travelers. So
yeah,
for that.
I love it. And your website is super easy to navigate. I was looking through it before we hopped on here, and you got all the different blog posts with all sorts of different things, from tips and tricks to stories to everything else. It's easy to see, the course that you got, learn a little bit about you. So people should definitely go check it out for sure.
Awesome. Yay.
Cool. You. Yeah, definitely. Well, Annie, thank you so much for sharing your experiences and your stories. I know I really enjoyed the conversation, and I know the listeners will too. So I appreciate your time and look forward to seeing you around the world soon.
Yes, thanks for having me. And, we will stay connected, and who knows, there may be a part 2 someday where we get to do more.
We'll do it live from the Balkans. How about that?
I am here for that. Let's go.
That'd be fun. We should plan that.
Totally.
Well, awesome, Annie. Thanks again, and we'll see you later.
All right. Bye.
Bye. Hey everybody, Kyle here. If you enjoyed today's show and want more, you can always check out every episode on Spotify, Anchor, YouTube, and now Amazon Music as well. Just search for Our Travel Experiences on any of those platforms and it will pop up. You can also find everything all in one place on my website, ourtravelexp.com. And if you want to see my travel pictures as well as travel pictures from guests on the show, you can check them out on Instagram. The page is called Our Travel Experiences Podcast. And if you want to share your own pictures on the Instagram page or be a guest on the podcast, you can message me via that Instagram page or email me at ourtravelexperiences@outlook.com. I would love to see your pictures and hear about your travel experiences, so please send them my way. And if that isn't enough for you, make sure to check out my weekly YouTube show, From Around the World Fridays. Every Friday, I'm taking 5 to 10 minutes to answer questions from listeners, share some souvenirs that I bought over the years, share my postcards over the years that I've accumulated, or share videos and pictures from one particular city or country that I visited, and so much more. So check it out, guys. You won't be disappointed, and make sure you go subscribe to that as well. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you somewhere around the world soon.